It's still hot in the bus. I know that sounds obvious if you've ever been to Florida in September, but I think I underestimated just how exhausting it is when you're trying to build something inside a metal box in this heat. I've got the bus parked on a little rental property out in the county while I finish everything. It's got enough space that I can work without being on top of everybody, but I'm not completely out in the middle of nowhere either. There are a few neighbors scattered around, people doing their own thing, waving if you happen to catch them outside, close enough to town if I need hardware or groceries, far enough away that it stays pretty quiet most days. I've been working on this bus for a while now, longer than I probably should have taken if I'd been more focused, but I kept changing things as I went. You think you know what you want until you're standing in a half-finished space and suddenly everything feels permanent. Right now it's mostly functional. That's the best way I can describe it. Solar's up, electrical's running, water system is partially installed. There's a few things I need to add here and there, but the bed platform is built, which is honestly the point where it stopped feeling like a project and started feeling like something I might actually live in. I used to watch a lot of people doing this online. Schoolie builds, van builds, tiny homes, mostly during 2020 when everything felt paused and everyone was just trying to figure out what normal was. I didn't think I'd end up doing it myself. But here we are. I don't really have a dramatic reason for it. I just want something that feels like it belongs to me. Something I can move if I need to. Something that isn't tied down to rent or neighbors or rules that don't really fit the way I want to live. It still doesn't feel real yet. Like I'm going to finish it and suddenly realize I've just built a very expensive idea instead of a home. Anyway, I'm going to test the power setup again today. I want to see if it handles everything running at once in this heat. Okay, small update, but I actually feel kind of accomplished today, which is rare because usually something in this bus decides to humble me before noon. I ran a full power test this morning. Fridge, light, stove, a couple outlets, all at once, just to see what would happen when I stopped being theoretical about it. It mostly held. There were a couple dips that made me pause and just stare at the system like I could intimidate it into behaving better, which obviously didn't work, but it did stabilize again after a minute. Solar setups are funny like that. They feel very set it and forget it until you actually need everything to run at once, and suddenly you're learning patience in real time. Also, one of my hoses decided it did not want to cooperate today, like fully refused. I swear it was fine yesterday, and then today it just wouldn't seal. I spent maybe 20 minutes tightening it, loosening it, redoing it, questioning my entire understanding of basic physics, and at one point I genuinely considered whether I was the problem. It was the hose. Eventually it stopped leaking, so I'm calling that a win, but I do feel personally victimized by it. Anyway, after that I tried a small canning test. Nothing big, just enough to make sure the setup in here is actually usable. I've done canning for years, so the process itself isn't new to me. It's more the space that's new. The bus kitchen is tight in a way I keep trying to be polite about, but there's no real polite version of you are constantly moving around yourself just to exist in this space. Still, it worked. It's actually kind of satisfying to see it function in here, even if everything takes longer than it should. I just have to be more deliberate with how I set things down, which, duh, but you don't realize how often you rely on having extra counter space until you don't have any. At one point I knocked a jar ring off the counter and watched it roll under the stove like it was trying to escape my responsibilities, which honestly felt symbolic. I keep thinking about how much of this whole setup is going to come down to problem solving in real time. Nothing dramatic, just constant small adjustments. Also, I've been noticing something weird online. Still, probably nothing, but there are more scattered posts about people being sick, acting confused, aggressive, things like that. It's inconsistent, which is what makes it hard to take seriously, but the pattern keeps repeating in different places. I'm not changing anything yet. I'm just paying attention, which I think is fair. Anyway, I'm going to let the system run a longer test later today and see if anything changes when everything's on for more than just a short burst. And I need water. A lot of water, because it's still absolutely ridiculous outside. I think I'm at that stage where the bus is basically done, and I keep finding excuses to treat it like it's still in progress, because admitting it's finished means I have to make decisions about leaving, which is annoying, because it is finished, mostly. There are still small things, trim, storage organization, little comfort details. I still haven't fully decided on a bedding setup, which feels absurd to be stuck on at this point, but apparently my brain thinks sleeping arrangements are more important than, I don't know, structural integrity or food systems. I spent way too long today comparing pillows online like that was the final boss of the apocalypse prep process. Not proud of that. The water system is also basically done now. Mostly. I say mostly because one of the fittings was slightly stubborn earlier, and I had to redo it twice before it stopped acting like it had its own opinion about my plans. I don't know why plumbing components always feel personally offended by human intention, but they do. Once I fixed it though, it's holding pressure fine, so that's one less thing on the list. I also found a water filter setup for a price that honestly made me suspicious at first. Like I genuinely assumed it was either broken or someone was about to message me asking for payment in gift cards. But it arrived, it works, and now I'm trying not to overthink it, which is harder than it should be. I've also started looking at maps more seriously. Not in a dramatic way, just in a practical, if I had to leave, where would I actually go kind of way. Florida is dense. People don't really think about it until you start zooming out and realizing how quickly quiet space turns into neighborhoods and highways and congestion. And I guess part of why I'm thinking about it more now is because there's been more of those sickness reports. It's still inconsistent. That's what makes it hard to take seriously. One post says it's just a weird flu. Another says hospitals are getting overwhelmed in isolated pockets. And then half of it gets taken down or buried before you can even recheck it. I saw something earlier about an ER situation that didn't look normal, but it was gone by the time I went back to it. That kind of thing makes your brain start filling in gaps whether you want it to or not. I keep telling myself it's probably nothing coordinated, probably just internet noise getting amplified because people are already sensitive after the last few years. But I also keep noticing it more often than I should be. So I'm looking at maps, not because I'm panicking, just because if I did need to move, I'd rather have already thought about it than try to figure it out while everyone else is doing the same thing. I know there are rules about where you can park overnight, where you can stay, how long you can stay there, and those rules still matter right now, because everything still works. Police still exist, systems still function, but I'm also trying to think ahead without spiraling about it. Which I'm mostly managing. Mostly. Anyway, this is the part where I should probably say I'm done for the day, but I'm probably going to reorganize storage again, because I keep convincing myself I'll find a more efficient version of already organized. So, yeah, that's the update. They took my neighbor today. I didn't actually see the beginning of it. I was outside the bus checking the water system again. Mostly just making sure nothing had shifted overnight because I don't fully trust anything that holds pressure anymore after that hose situation the other day. Everything seemed normal at first. Too normal, actually. There were police cars when I looked up. Not speeding in, not flashing lights chaotic, just already there. Already positioned like they knew exactly which house they were going to. That was the first thing that felt slightly off. It didn't look like a neighbor dispute or a wellness check. It looked prepared. I remember just standing there for a second thinking I should probably go back inside the bus and mind my own business, because that's usually the correct decision in every situation ever. But I didn't. They were shouting a few minutes later. Not clear words I could make out, just overlapping voices from inside the house. It didn't sound like arguing. It sounded more like trying to control something that wasn't responding the way it was supposed to. Then an ambulance showed up. It was weird because it wasn't slow like the police. It wasn't "we've been called and are assessing the situation." It was chaotic. Immediate exit, doors open, stretchers already being pulled out like timing mattered more than anything else. One of the EMTs already had restraints in his hand when he got to the door. I noticed that and didn't know what to do with it. People don't usually show up pre-deciding restraint protocols unless they've been told what they're walking into. I could see her when they brought her out. She was alive. I know that sounds like the obvious part, but it didn't feel obvious in the moment. She wasn't unconscious. Her eyes were open. She was moving, just not in a way that made sense for someone who was fully present. She looked overheated, flushed, sweating heavily, like a fever you can see from a distance. She kept trying to speak, but it wasn't forming properly. Not clear sentences. More like fragments that didn't finish becoming words. At one point, she turned her head toward the street and just locked onto nothing. Like she was trying to orient herself, but couldn't find where she was. They were struggling with her more than I expected for someone being transported, but it wasn't violent in a clean way. It was frantic, uncoordinated, like she didn't understand what her body was doing. And then she bit one of the EMTs. It happened fast, not dramatic like in the movies, just sudden contact and immediate reaction from everyone around her. Everything after that got louder. They pulled him back immediately. Gloves, arms, distance. Everything changed in seconds. The EMT kept saying it wasn't serious, that it barely broke skin, but the way the others reacted didn't match that at all. They were already treating it like it mattered more than he was saying. I don't know what they did with her after that. I stopped watching. I went back into the bus after that point and just stood there for a minute without doing anything, which isn't like me. I usually default to fixing something when I don't know what to do. I didn't fix anything. I just listened. The sirens left eventually. Everything else went back to normal like it hadn't happened. But it didn't feel normal anymore. I'm finishing up the bus tonight, but because I don't think I want to be here when things like that are happening across the street in real time instead of just showing up online later. I don't know exactly when I'm leaving yet, but I'm not staying much longer. That part feels certain now.